Hey guys, Sheephead here with another video from Final Fantasy XIV, and today we are going to be looking at turn 1 of the first endgame raid instance in the game, which is also known as the Binding Coil of Bahamut. Now before we start talking about the boss itself, I thought it'd be a good idea just to explain how you get inside the instance itself and what the requirements are. Now if you're already inside the instance, then please use the annotations on screen to skip directly to the ADS or to the first boss guide. So the first thing that you need to do is already have completed the 3 primal hard modes, which is Ifrit, Garuda and Titan. And after you've done those, all you need to do is head to the Waking Sands. As you guys can see here, this guy has a quest called Primal Awakening. And once you pick this up, it's a very small chain quest, which is probably going to take you about 10 minutes to complete. And once this quest is complete, you'll simply have access to the instance. Now the first thing that you're going to notice upon entering the instance is that you have this mini boss called the ADS blocking your way. Now this mini boss actually does require a tactic, so I'm going to talk about the boss abilities first and then the tactic after. So the first ability that happens directly after pulling the boss is the ability called High Voltage. As you guys can see here, the second we pull the boss is going to start casting this. Now this high voltage has to be interrupted throughout the entire fight and is going to be cast about every 15 seconds. If high voltage is not interrupted, the whole room is going to take about 1.5k damage, and also everybody in the room is going to get a 30-second debuff called Paralysis. In short, Paralysis is not only going to stop you from casting from time to time, but it's also going to stop you from moving, which combined with the later boss abilities is going to make this fight extremely problematic and is probably going to make you wipe. So as I said previously, this needs to be interrupted every single time it's cast. It's for this reason that you should set up an interrupt rotation before you start the fight. As you guys can see on screen, I was set first in the interrupt rotation, and I pick up the first one. 15 seconds later, the next interrupt is going to be picked up by the other bard in the group, and so on. Now if one of us accidentally used our interrupt on a different cast, as the boss does cast other abilities other than high voltage, which I will talk about later, we simply had one of the other 2 paladins in the group interrupt our cast until our cooldowns were back up. The second ability that the boss has also has a cast bar and is called Repelling Cannons. As you guys can see, this is what the ability looks like, and it's simply just a massive AoE on the floor that the melee need to run out of. If you do get hit by this, it's going to hit for about 1.5 to 2k damage, and you just want to simply avoid it. The third and final ability that the boss has also has a cast bar and is called Piercing Laser, as you guys can see. Now this ability hits for about 2.5 to 3k, and this is pretty much going to be the main reason that you will wipe on this fight if you miss the interrupts on the high voltage. As I said before, if you miss high voltage, you're going to get paralysis, which is going to stop you from casting and stop you from moving, and thus you're going to get hit by Piercing Laser, which will end up killing you. So as you guys can see on screen, Piercing Laser is this massive red line across the floor, and it's pretty much going to go from one side of the room to the other. It's for this main reason that we decided to stack on the right side of the room, and then when the first Piercing Laser comes, we all move to the left side of the room. Because all the range are stacked in one location, we can always predict where the Piercing Laser is going to be, and as soon as he starts casting, we can all move to the left side or the right side of the room. Okay, so before we move on to the next part of the fight, I just want to explain that these 3 casts are always going to be in this same order. So it's going to be High Voltage, followed by Repelling Cannon, and then finally Piercing Laser. Now it's a great idea just to get into the habit of knowing which cast is up next, as you do not want to try and interrupt one of the other abilities, because if you do, you will have used your cooldown, the next high voltage will come, no one will be able to interrupt it, and you will wipe. So it's for this reason, as I said previously, that you should have a backup interrupter just in case this happens. About 50 seconds into the fight, you're going to notice that the boss spawns an ad at the entrance to the room. As soon as it spawns, you want your off tank to pick up the ad and just tank it at the other end of the corridor. Now as the fight goes on, more and more of these ads are going to spawn, and it's for this reason that you want to kill them as soon as possible. We decided to switch all DPS to the ads as soon as they spawned, apart from one melee DPS who would stay on the boss at all times, as it didn't make sense for him to run from one side of the room to the other and then have to run all the way back. And also we kept the interrupter, who was about to pick up the next high voltage, on the boss as well, just to make sure they didn't miss the interrupt. Now as far as the ads go, there are actually 2 which spawn. One is a defense node and one is an attack node, and they do have different abilities. The defense node has repelling cannons like the main boss does, and you simply just have to run away from this. And yet again, this is another good reason why we didn't put our melee DPS on the ads and kept him on the boss the entire fight. As far as the attack node goes, he does put down a purple void zone, which is going to slow anyone who stands inside it. So as you guys know, this combined with Piercing Laser means that you'll get hit by the laser and probably die. However, when he does this ability, as long as you get out of the circle as soon as possible, the debuff should be gone by the next time he casts Piercing Laser. Now the last thing that I need to explain about this boss is probably going to be the first thing that you see upon starting the encounter. As you guys can see on screen, as soon as we start the fight, you're going to see this charge complete in 4 clicks pop up on the screen. Basically, every 1 minute that passes from the start of the fight, another message is going to pop up and another click is going to be complete. So simply, you have 4 minutes to complete this boss. If you do not kill him within 4 minutes, then he's going to explode and kill everyone in the room. Now it's for this reason that as soon as you kill the second ad, you are then going to switch to the boss and nuke him down as soon as possible. In the meantime, just as you kill the second ad, a third ad is going to spawn, and your off tank is going to tank that at the very back of the room while everyone focuses DPS on the boss. Now sadly, this boss is a mini boss and it doesn't drop any loot, but it's pretty much just a thing to say like, are you ready for this instance and what it is going to have in store for you in the future, seeing as in turn 2 you're going to meet a lot of these again for Trash and for the main boss himself. One thing that I should point out is once you've killed this, then you will not have to fight it again until next reset. It is only a one-time thing per week. Now I'm not going to go over the Trash on the way to the boss, seeing as it's relatively simple. You don't even need to CC any of the mobs and all that good stuff. So let's continue with the first boss. So yet again, before we go over the boss tactics, I'm going to focus on the boss abilities and what they do. So the first 2 abilities that I want to mention are going to happen throughout the entire fight. The first one is a Frontal Cone Cleave, which deals about 1500 to 2000 damage. And the second one is called Whipback, which is about 120 degree tail swipe, which is going to hit for about 4000 damage. So for these reasons, you never want to stand in front of the boss unless you're the tank. And at the same time, if you're melee DPS, you ideally want to stand at the sides or just be ready to move out of the Whipback as soon as he starts casting it. Now the second ability that the boss has is called Steel Scales. 30 seconds into the fight, you'll notice that the boss is going to gain 1 stack of Steel Scales. Now, every 45 seconds after this, he's going to gain a new stack. When the boss gains this stack of Steel Scales, he's going to increase his physical damage dealt, and if this stacks up to 3 or maybe even 4, then he's going to start one-shotting your tank. So how do you deal with this? About 40 seconds after the start of the fight, you'll notice that some of the platforms will start to glow a blue colour. Now after about 5 seconds, they're going to stop glowing, and an ad is going to spawn for every one person who is stood on one of the tiles. So as you guys can see on screen, our off tank is going to stand on one of the flashing tiles, and he's purposely going to spawn an ad. As you guys can see, this is the ad. It's called a Dark Matter Slime, and this ad, once spawned, is going to fixate on the person who spawned it, regardless of threat or DPS. It is now this person's job to kite the ad from where they spawned it to the boss. Once the ad gets to the boss is going to turn around and he's going to eat the slime. Doing this is going to remove 1 stack per ad of the Steel Scales, and it's also going to heal the boss for a small amount. So the best way to deal with this is, as I said previously, is to get your off tank to grab the ad in the first place. He can then, as you can see on screen, drag the ad towards the boss. Now while he's doing this, there's 2 things that you need to watch out for. Number 1 is you need someone else to DPS down the ad to get it as low as possible. The reason we do this is so that when the boss consumes the ad, he's only going to heal for a small amount of HP. Whereas if you do not DPS the ad, he's going to gain about 5% of his total health bar. Now the second thing that you need to watch out for is the fact that if the person who's kiting the ad, the person who spawned the ad, moves too far away from the ad, it will explode and deal about 5k damage to anyone in the vicinity. So as you guys can see on screen, I actually don't use any dots when I'm DPSing down this ad, for the main reason that I don't want to accidentally kill it before it gets to the boss. So to be honest, this phase is relatively simple, and all you really need to do is make sure that you heal the tank through the damage, no melee DPS stand in front or behind the boss, and finally you make sure that you spawn 1 ad per flashing tile phase, get it low in health, drag it to the boss, and make sure that it gets consumed by the boss. Other than that, there is one more ability in this phase. However, it doesn't seem to do too much damage and only hits for about 300, and that is this Poison Cloud here. The boss is just going to turn around and spit on you, and once it lands on you, all you need to do is just move out of it and you will stop taking damage. Now, when the boss gets to about 65%, he's going to split his body and his HP in half. So as you guys can see here, we've just hit the 65% mark, and he's going to split in half. Now at this point, all the abilities that he had in the first phase are exactly the same, except he does half the amount of damage. So in our kill, before we hit the 65% mark, we managed to kill 2 ads, thus removing 2 stacks of the debuff. As soon as we killed the ad, we pushed the boss as fast as possible so we could get him into this phase before he gained another stack. That means that when the boss splits in half, he starts with 0 stacks of steel scale. This means that we can start this phase with the smallest amount of damage possible. Now the first thing that you want to do in this phase is you want to simply get your off tank to drag the second ad as far away as possible from the main boss. It's a good idea that you have your off tank standing right next to the boss as soon as he splits so he can get threat and start moving. Now it's a good idea to have a route planned out before you start the fight in which the off tank is going to take the second boss. By doing this you can make sure that the DPS and healers are not standing on those tiles and thus won't get hit by the cleave or hit by the whip back. If you do not manage to drag the other boss over to the other side of the room in time, then both of the bosses are just going to join back up again and they're going to kill your tank, seeing as they're going to have 4+ stacks of steel scale. Now at this point it's also a good idea to have a designated healer on each of the tanks. So as you guys can see, one of our healers is going to split off to the other side of the room and he's going to primarily heal the off tank with the second boss. Now at this point in the fight there are 2 ways that you can do it. If you manage to push the boss in to 65%, i.e. into the split phase, before you spawn the third ad, then you have enough DPS to kill both of the ads before the stacks of steel scale get too high and they kill your tanks. However, if you don't have enough DPS to do this, then it's recommended that you continue with the tactic from the first phase. However, instead of spawning 1 ad, you're going to have to spawn 2 ads, and you're going to have 2 DPS, pick up the ads, and move them to each boss to remove the stacks of steel scale. As you guys can see in the video, we did have enough DPS, so all we did is we focused all our DPS on the main boss, and we got him to about 5%. Once we did this, we switched all the DPS over to the other boss, and we got him as low as possible. Now the reason that we did this is that the boss has a final mechanic in this fight. If you do not kill both of the ads within a 5 or 10 second window, then the boss is going to simply respawn. If this does happen, there's a good chance that you're going to wipe in the near future, seeing as your healers are going to be extremely low on mana, where the boss is hitting the tanks for a huge amount due to the stacks of steel scale. So as I said, we concentrated all the DPS onto the main boss, and once he was on 5%, we then switched all DPS to the other boss. Once we got both of the bosses to 5% health, we then switched 2 DPS off the second boss onto the main boss. So we had 2 DPS on each boss. At this point, we simply just DPS'd them down and killed them within the 5 to 10 second window. Now it's a good idea that if you have a limit break, you can use one of the DPS's to kill one of the bosses while the remaining DPS focus the other boss. Now in our boss kill, you can see that one of our tanks actually died right towards the end of the fight, and because of this the 2 bosses merged back together. When this happens, the boss is going to obviously gain double the health, seeing as the health was split in half when they split, and also the stacks of steel scale are going to deal twice as much damage, as they were halved as well when the boss split. However, this didn't happen to be much of an issue, seeing as we just tanked the boss and we just killed it straight out. And in my opinion, it was probably easier doing it this way than having to coordinate getting both of the bosses dead at exactly the same time. So guys, that pretty much wraps up the end of the guide for turn 1 of the Binding Coil of Bahamut. If you have any questions about the fight or any suggestions for my videos on this channel, then please put a comment in the comment section below, as I do reply to every single comment that gets posted on my video. Other than that, if you like this video, then please hit the thumbs up button. Make sure that you favourite and subscribe to my channel, as I will be uploading daily content on Final Fantasy XIV. Other than that guys, thanks for watching this video, and I wish you the best of luck downing the first turn of the Binding Coil of Bahamut. So as you can see, if I just handed in the 10 normal quality mistletoes, I'd have got 26,400. However, by making these all high quality, I gain an extra 13,200 experience.